Thanks, Jerome. Y'all are very kind, and you've made one mistake, and that is not giving a history professor a timer. So, Clint, I guess I'm looking at you. Oh, Kareen, it's you. How perfect. All right, great. Happy Independence Day. How about a round of applause for Texas? It is so good to be home. Yes, Austin, Texas is better than Washington, D.C. And for this Longhorn alumnus, it is great to be at the place where we sing the Eyes of Texas. You can clap, Aggies, come on. And you see, that's precisely what I want to talk about today. The big question facing Texas, the biggest question. It's on the minds of legislators. It's on the minds of business people. It's on the minds of teachers. How quickly will the Longhorns win an SEC championship? But there's an even bigger question, because as we sit here on Texas Independence Day, at this very hour in 1836, dozens of men were arriving at Washington on the Brazos to sign for the final time, actually second to final time, because there was a problem with the draft, the Texas Declaration of Independence. And it's that spirit of what they were trying to do that I would like to commemorate for you today. And I know it comes as a shock that there's a conservative historian who is a graduate of the University of Texas. But that's yet more evidence that God's grace shines upon this great state. You see, what happened on March 2nd, 1836 was important for a host of reasons, but at the top of those reasons was that Texas independence signified that the greatest thing we can fight for, the greatest thing, self-governance, was being reaffirmed by that document and by those men and their wives and their families and thousands of Texans. Nearly 200 years later, as we stand here and we think about what Texas is, obviously for Speaker Phelan, who's doing a great job, how about another round of applause for him, for his leadership? We think about his colleagues in the House, his colleagues in the Senate, our friends who are teachers from school districts. We all have the privilege and burden of sustaining what those founders of the Texas Republic were ultimately trying to teach us, which is that the most important thing that we can offer future generations, the most important, is transmitting that value, that passion for which we would be willing to spill blood, of self-governance to the next generation. And so here in 2023, we have to ask ourselves the question, as the eyes of Texas are on Texas, are we doing that? Those of you who know me well know that I speak the truth often candidly, but always with good cheer. I kind of abhor bomb throwing, especially in politics and policy, because it doesn't really advance the ball. And maybe that's because I'm a fifth-generation teacher from a working-class family on the Gulf Coast who only attended public schools. And when I had the great privilege, when Governor Abbott asked me to chair the 1836 project, I said, of course I would, because this adopted Texan who considers Austin his hometown has so much to give back to this state. And the point is that we are not going to succeed in transmitting self-governance from this generation to the next if we fail to answer the biggest policy question facing Texas today. And that is, can we guarantee that in addition to the great important hard skills of reading and writing and arithmetic, that our public schools, the most noble of the noble experiments of this noble society, can we guarantee that from this generation to the next, that the next generation of Texas school children will say, I love Texas? I don't like bearing bad news, but it is a fact that there are a large number of forces many of them outside Texas, arrayed against answering that question in the affirmative. And look, I want to be really clear. It's not because teachers are bad. In fact, it's because teachers are really good. They're heroic. How about a round of applause for teachers in this state? As we sit here, my little brother, who's a football coach, public school teacher, English teacher in Louisiana, is teaching inner city kids because it's something that he has done for nearly 20 years. And Robbie, as we call him, would say, Kevin, the biggest problem that I face when I go into that classroom are some cultural issues that manifest themselves in the classroom, but it's really the lack of commitment by the system to the kids in my classroom. And so those of you who are teachers, those of you who are heroic and working for school districts, you know coming from me, I'm not throwing a stone at you. In fact, I'm on your side. People in this room are on your side in saying that we want to honor what you do in the classroom, just like I want to honor what my younger brother does, by saying it's not about the system, it's about the kids. And so, just to put a fine point on it, when Randi Weingarten, as she did yesterday, you might have heard about her, she's the president of the American Federation of Teachers, said once again for about the 200th time that your kids are not your kids, they're our kids, they're the system's kids when they're in the classroom. It's time for Texas to say, go pound sand. Yeah. By the way, I think Randi Weingarten must hold the Guinness record for the number of really absurd comments. To criticize that and to criticize her is not to criticize teachers or the heroic sacrifice that our teachers, our principals, our superintendents make. It's to say that the best way we can honor what they do is to refocus their work, not on perpetuating the system, but on helping young people be educated and be formed. Because by every objective measure, I don't do hyperbole, I mean it, by every objective measure, in spite of record spending on public schools, in spite of all of the commitment that this state legislature has made very rightly on public education, on our best day in Texas, educational attainment is stagnant. And once again, just to be really clear, because I know how Twitter operates, it isn't because our teachers are ill-intentioned. It isn't because we have been wrong in saying that we as a society want an excellent public education system. It's because we have allowed thinking that contravenes the idea of Texas to create a system that is too big to change. And all I know from studying history is that any time you have a bureaucracy or a company or an organization that's too big to change, you need to put your hand on that third rail and change it. Because, thank you. This is the point. All of the forces that are arrayed against reforming our education system, all of the forces that are arrayed against the common sense idea that every dollar Texas taxpayers allot to education should go to the school of their parents' choice, all of those forces, interestingly, are those who are opposed to knowing Texas history. They're the same forces who are opposed to teaching American history and civics. I don't do hyperbole, I don't do conspiracy theory, so you know it's not a conspiracy theory. One of the great things that my colleagues on the 1836 Commission did was to draw out that problem of not teaching Texas history, not teaching American history well. And the thought that I want you to be thinking about this day and tomorrow and the next few months for the rest of the session, and those of you who are members of the legislature, you know I pass this along in humility. I'm not telling you what to do, it's encouragement, is that you can't love what you don't know. And it is not a coincidence that the same people, most of them headquartered in Washington, D.C., which should be a red flag right away, who are opposed to school choice, are the same people who are opposed to teaching Texas history, American history, civics, the Declaration of Independence, whether it's in Philadelphia or Washington on the Brazos. And it is time, if the eyes of Texas are on Texas, for every Texan in this room and every Texan who is involved in policy and politics to say, for every child in this noble republic, especially considering that Texas is the American future with our pluralism and our diversity, every child is guaranteed, just as was in the hearts of those signers of the Texas Declaration of Independence, self-governance. If we fail, we're not just failing to pass good policy. We're not just failing to pass what can be transformational change for young kids. We are failing what we, as the heirs of a cultural inheritance that makes us zealous in Texas about running our own lives, flourishing, and being great neighbors, has been given to us. I will close by saying, I know that we're up to the task. Because while sometimes in Texas history it takes us a little while to get it right, we always, eventually, get it right. God bless you, and God bless Texas.